Welcome back to the Animated 100 list, where every other week we sit down and we watch a theatrically released animated movie to add to the Animated 100 list here at Modern Mouse. My name is Josh Taylor, and this week we're talking about the 1995 film Pebble and the Penguin.
Once there was a penguin who fell in love with the most beautiful girl penguin in the whole rookery.
Usually I would reach down into the bag of comments below and pull out a movie to talk about, but I also wanted to bring guests onto the Animated 100 series. And this week is our first guest for the series. You might know him as the Storytime guy over on TikTok or Instagram or even on YouTube.
If you like this, then you're gonna love this. Today we're talking about the Aztec and Egyptian gods of the dead, Anubis and Xolotl.
I know him as Matthew Torres. He talks about mythology, stories, films, television, etc. And I wanted to talk to him and his critical eye about one of his favorite films.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you could argue what's the greatest animated film of all time, which I would say, unbiasedly, Spirited Away by Studio Ghibli,
Wow.
Pinocchio, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King. Those are probably the top 4 greatest animated movies ever made unbiasedly. But biasedly, I would say, without a doubt, Pebble and the Penguin is my number 1 film. I love Pebble and the Penguin so freaking much.
By the way, if you want to see the entire interview that I have with Matthew, you can see that over at patreon.com/modernmouse. You'll be able to watch that entire interview basically uncut. And let's talk about how we rate movies here on the Animated 100 list. You get a 0 to 50 possible rating with 5 different categories. Each category you get a possible 10 points, and those categories are animation, story, characters, the sound and music, and the historical and social impact of the film. So let's talk about Pebble and the Penguin. It's a story of Hubie, voiced by Martin Short, who's trying to give a space rock, essentially, or a pebble, to the love of his life, Marina. But unfortunately, the Tim Curry character, the villainous Drake, is also trying to get to Marina and is going to clash with Hubie.
Get your filthy flippers off my girl!
Hubie!
What the? Hubie! We thought you were dead!
You heard me, Drake!
Now you're gonna wish that you were.
So it's a very classic story of a villain, a hero, a damsel, a sidekick, etc. But let's first, before we jump into story, talk about animation. This movie was made by Don Bluth Productions. In fact, it's the last of the Don Bluth Productions. You might also know them for movies like The Land Before Time or The Secret of NIMH, but this is the last through MGM Studios, who were trying to push this movie out as quickly as possible. Because of that, Don Bluth got frustrated and didn't even want his name attached to the film. And you can kind of tell why. The animation feels rushed, and it doesn't feel complete in many areas of this film. While the main cast and some of the shots, including some of the camera work involved in the animation, look great at certain points in the film, I particularly really like this aircraft carrier shot that you get, where you have this giant boat out on the ocean with the camera moving. There are so many other shots in this film that feel like they're defying the laws of physics, or just don't feel complete at all. One in particular where the water is rising almost too fast, and there are a ton of background extra penguins that don't have any feet. They just feel like weeble wobbles in that sense. This doesn't feel like the Don Bluth production that you know. Don Bluth famously left the Disney company to start doing movies on his own, and he comes from that background of Disney animation, and you can usually see that in his films. But this really feels sometimes more like a Hanna-Barbera production, and that's not me knocking Hanna-Barbera. Usually they were making TV episodes week to week, and they had to get things out quickly. And because of that, they cut corners. They would use the same frames over and over again for characters running. But this has that same feeling for a full-length feature movie that was released into theaters. Because of that, I have to give the animation of this movie a 3 out of 10. Moving on to story.
So when I think about Pebble and the Penguin, I look back at it, it's the simple story of how you tell a story. And I think it tells such a simple, beautiful story so damn well. You know, I always say it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And
Yeah.
for this story, it's the simple. The hero wants something. He can't get it, he gets sent away, he has to come back. That hero's journey, that fantasy element we see, this story could be told in its summary across time and across any culture. You know, the hero wants to propose to the girl he loves, but the bad guy gets in the way of this. It's he leaves and he has to come back to save her.
Yeah.
He's got his best friend by his side, there's a journey, there's a battle, he ends up with the happy ending. Is that Princess and the Bride? No, it's Pebble and the Penguin, you know?
Like you said, this is a classic story. It follows the Joseph Campbell hero's journey idea that you see in movies like Star Wars. It all kind of works because I think it's just a very familiar territory to be in. And it's an easy hour and 15 minutes to get through because of that. As soon as I get the basic premise of what's going on with these penguins, I feel like I kind of know where it's going to end up at. And because of that, I could tune in and tune out whenever I needed to, which when you're watching at home is kind of nice. It's the same way and reason why people go see sequels in the theaters, because they are familiar with the setting, they're familiar with the characters and the possible story that might unfold. And there's something really nice about watching something that feels safe, you know what I mean? But because it's safe, it doesn't feel like it's going far above and beyond. So I have to give the story here a smack dab in the middle 5 out of 10. As far as the characters are concerned, the voice cast here is incredible.
You look at this cast and you're like, wait, Tim Curry, Steve Martin, like what is, or you know, Martin Short, like what is this weird thing? And yet they do it so well. You know, Martin Short has that such unique voice to himself, and yet he sings the hell out of it.
Martin Short is completely underrated, and I've thought that for years and years. The way that he sings, the way that he enunciates, I love everything about the way that he produces Hubie as a character. And Tim Curry stands out far beyond some of the other animated films that he did.
So, nerd, I hear you want to be a big ladies' man.
It doesn't sound exactly like Tim Curry. He's putting on this brochacho kind of voice that really works for the character of Drake and stands out away from some of the other, especially 90s animated films that he was doing at the time. The unfortunate part for these characters is I feel like they lack a bit in design. They feel very childish. The idea that Hubie has these giant eyelashes with these bright blue eyes, it feels like it appeals to 6 and 7-year-olds instead of appealing to all ages. And if you've been on this channel for some period of time, I think you know how I feel about all ages entertainment. The idea that everyone should love animation. And when you make movies like this, I feel like it gives a certain demographic of people the opportunity to say that animation is only for children. Because of that, I gave this a 4 out of 10 here. And for the sound, I kind of feel similar in the same way to the story. The score here is nice, the sound design is nice, but nothing stands out as exemplary. And all of the songs that are in the film, even though they're fun to listen to in the moment, never feel like there's something I hum afterwards. They're never songs that stick with me. They're not the earworms that Disney typically has in their animated films. And in fact, in moments where I think the score could make this story feel more epic, it kind of falls flat. So instead of giving it a bang in the middle 5 like I did for the story, which feels right for this, I'm gonna instead give it a 4 out of 10 here. Don Bluth would still go on to make things for other people, but this is the last of his own films. And in that way, it does feel like the end of some kind of bygone era where everything is hand-drawn and all of the people working in animation were taught by the few that came from Disney's 9 old men. You have to think that The Pebble and the Penguin came out the same year that Toy Story came out, and pretty soon DreamWorks would enter the stage with their own 3D animated films. The unfortunate thing here is that I don't think many people think of The Pebble and the Penguin as one of those last animated hand-drawn films, or think of it as the last Don Bluth production even. Most people think of Don Bluth Productions as the movies from his earlier time, doing things like The Land Before Time, or All Dogs Go to Heaven, or The Secret of Nim. And because of that, I don't think that it's as well thought of. So with all that in mind, I gave the historical and social impact a 3 out of 10 here, giving the total score of this movie a 19 possible points out of 50, putting it on the list. It's not ranking up there with Bambi, but hopefully it doesn't fall down the list too far. We'll see what happens with the rest of this list as it fills out. In 2 weeks, I'll be back to talk about another film, Illumination's The Lorax, thanks to the comments that you've provided. And if you want to see a movie on this list, leave a comment down below. The videos that don't feature a guest on, I'm gonna have your comments be the reason why I watch those films. So let me know what you thought about The Pebble and the Penguin, either in the comments down below or over on our Discord server. You can find the link to that in the description box, and join the conversation about the next film that we're talking about, which is The Lorax, over on Discord. I'll be starting to talk about that sometime soon. And in the meantime, keep on watching animated movies so that hopefully we can knock Chicken Little off this list.